We've got three different ways we can begin to edit the vertical design. The first of which is the grid editor, which is found on the ribbon. So go ahead and click on that now. The grid editor can be used for editing the vertical profile of any string within the project, not just grading strings. So we could begin to go in and make changes using the grid. On the first vertical curve length, we might just go and change that to 100 and then press enter. You can see there as we make that change, the vertical curve will update within the vertical grading editor. Maybe we'll just set that back down to 50 and press enter again. You've got all of the same tools that we reviewed in the grading string module. So if you do want to add IPs based on a position on the plan, or add IPs based on the geometry of the alignment that you're currently using, then you can use those to manage the vertical design if you wish. Certainly this is a supplement to the vertical grading editor, but you can use this purely as a standalone way of editing the design. We're going to close the grid editor down. The next option is to actually edit directly within the screen. So first of all, you just need to make sure that the command line down the bottom is not running any command. It should say select a command from the ribbon. We're going to simply left click close to the IP found at chainage 300. As soon as you left click on screen with no command running, you'll get a contextual ribbon which will allow us to edit the IP using some of the tools found up here. Some of these tools are not available on the Home tab ribbon. They're only found on this contextual ribbon. One of them is the incremental change in elevation. So you can see here in the tools panel that we have an incremental amount of 0.1. If we click on the up and down arrows that are found to the left hand side of the form here, you can actually move that IP up and down, as I'm doing now, at increments of whatever value you've set in there. So in this case, this is every 100 mil. What we can also do is match the IP onto the reference surface, which is found in the background. So in this point, we've got the pasted surface being shown. If we wanted the IP, which is where these two tangents would intersect, to match onto that particular surface, we can click on this button, as you can do now, and you can see that the IP will move directly onto that surface. This is a one-off process, so if we do decide to go and move this IP back down or back up, you can see that we're able to do that. We're also able to remove the IP, so this would delete it from the design, meaning that we'd end up connecting from this vertical curve to this vertical curve over here with a single tangent. At any point you make any design changes in here, such as changing the vertical curve length or the in-grade or the out-grade, you can simply press enter to accept the cell, or you can also click on apply, okay, and that will allow that edit to take place. What we're going to do is click on close. The last option is to directly edit an IP from a command on the ribbon, and this is using the IP edit button. So go ahead and click on that. What we can then do is simply go back to the same IP we were editing just a minute ago, left click, and you'll see that the form that is produced is the same form that was produced when we created the IP. So these three solutions all pretty much give you similar types of tools, but they're really offering you three different ways to edit the IP. I'm going to click on cancel, and just be careful to make sure that the command running down the bottom is not continuing. So at the moment it's asking us to edit an IP. I'm going to press escape a couple of times just to stop that from continuing. Also found on the ribbon, we've got the option to delete IPs. Now this is a tool which you have to be careful when using, because when you select the button from the ribbon, as soon as you left click, it will delete the closest IP found to where you've left clicked. This command will keep running until you press escape. Okay, so it's important that you press escape to finish the command. If we wanted to begin manually moving the IPs around, we've got a selection of tools also found on the ribbon. We're going to go ahead and click on the following button, and as you can see down in the command line, we're prompted to click on an IP to move. So what we're going to do is just left click close to, not exactly on, but close to the IP that's found around chainage 80. As we do that, we're given the option to manually reposition the IP. So what we're going to do is just try and get these two tangents, the incoming and outgoing, to roughly line up with the sampled surface in the background as we've got here, and then left click to reposition. This is one of those commands which actually will finish once you've run it. We've got a few other tools which enable you to move IPs up and down, along grade, or left and right. If we wanted to raise the entire profile or even lower the entire profile by a set amount, we can use the following button. This is a button which was also found on the grid editor. So we could type in a value of, say, 100 mil, 0.1, and then click OK, and the entire design will have been raised up by 100 mil. I'm just going to drop that design back down, minus 0.1, and then click OK. Lastly, we have the option to edit IPs over a set chainage range. So rather than editing the whole design or individually editing each IP, we might want to edit a group of IPs, and that's done via this button up here. So what we might decide to do is to say between chainage 150, which will put us somewhere around here, to chainage 510, which will actually put us just over here, which should grab this IP. We can then edit the 3 vertical curves or 3 IPs that are found within that chainage range. We may decide to incrementally add a value to them of, say, a meter. We may decide to shift their chainages by a set amount. In this case, this would be a meter. We may also decide to override all their vertical curve lengths. So we might check that box, then type in a vertical curve length of 100, and click Apply to the right-hand side. And you can see there how the software has now changed those vertical curve lengths all the way through. So if we wanted to set them back to, say, 50, we could type in 50, click Apply, and the design has been changed now to 50. You'll notice that just to the right-hand side of the Apply button, we can match any IPs within that chainage range onto the reference surface, and we can also delete IPs within that chainage range if we wanted to. At this point, we're simply going to click on Close.